Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer, and I today have the pleasure of company of Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar. General Ravi Shankar, namaskaram and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskaram, good evening, and thanks a lot for inviting me over.
It's our pleasure, sir. And viewers, you may have seen the previous episode with General Ravi Shankar where we talked about the politics of China and Pakistan. This time, we are going to talk about the economics of Pakistan and China and the ensuing things that are going on. So now modern day warfare is not just on the ground where tanks meet tanks, people meet people, and so on and so forth. Now the warfare is in all spheres, including cyber. So we're going to talk about all these things now in this conversation. Stay tuned for what I expect to be a very absorbing conversation. General Ravi Shankar, the once China started aggressively moving against India, I'm just setting the context, sir. So what India did was they banned a lot of apps, including something called PUBG. I think I haven't played it, but I heard it's extremely popular.
Yeah,
And also there's one other game thing. It's like YouTube. I don't remember. I can't remember the name.
TikTok.
TikTok, exactly.
Uh,
So even that is banned. And and China couldn't retaliate because it doesn't use a lot of software of India, at least on like for like. But what they did was a few months later, they said that if you think that your infrastructure is very safe, think again. We can bring down your power grid anytime. And as if to prove, and it is alleged that on October 13th or 11th of 2020, I don't remember the exact date, in Mumbai, the grid went off for 10 to 12 hours. And in viewers, if you watch our daily global insights, we had given information 2 3 days ago about how many places were targeted or hacked into, and how many places the Chinese actually succeeded. You have to go back to our DGI episode to find out the data. So now this is where Indian government obviously cannot say that yes, we got hacked. That would be like saying that we are not having
yeah.
capability to deal with this. So they're not saying that. However, the Maharashtra government has sort of let it slip that it may have happened. Be that as it may, we don't mind.
Okay, fine.
Right.
It's just an incident,
It's an
right? Yeah.
incident, right, right. So what we are looking at is now this warfare kind of getting into the economic front. So if India stops using China's software, I think India will find alternatives. Clearly, software, China is not the leader. There are other places that they can find data and so on and so forth. There's also the AI effect that is coming in because if you look at the 5G technology, people said that China has the capability to try and get to profile everybody and so on and so forth. Now you, as a person who is sort of like, you've looked at them eyeball to eyeball in army side, but you also have done a lot of other work. By the way, he has an excellent blog site, Gunner Spot, and I'll give you the details as part of the show, more details, so that you can go and look at his articles. Very thought provoking, and the kind general has allowed us to republish some of his pieces in PGurus. We are doing that from time to time. But the point I'm trying to make here is you are one of the most qualified to talk about this fear or this type of warfare that is now started happening. What are your thoughts,
Well,
sir?
yeah. See, warfare has evolved. It's no more confined to the domains of land, air, and uh, uh, sea. Warfare has evolved into space, energy, resources, cyber, electronics, public opinion, propaganda, and politics, and more, even health, right? So the domain, it's a multi-domain warfare. Economics, hard economics, digital. So when China did what it did, right, unilaterally, aggressively, we did what we did. We did, that all those actions which we took. We did a digital strike. We put an economic blockade. We didn't, you know, allow them contracts. We amended our laws. So all those. Well, China, if it has blacked out Bombay for 12 hours, so be it. But it couldn't do more, could it? After all, if China could control the world, it will black out every city in India every day. It doesn't happen. Why? Assuming that they did the blackout, they didn't do it again. Why? Have you thought of that? So their capability is not so great. One. And their capability is not so great that we can't retaliate. The retaliation need not be like for like. It should be like for unlike. So that is how it is. It's not necessary that he does one A, you do B. You can do X, Y, Z. So we did that. He felt the heat. After all, if Huawei is in this state today, the lead was ours. We banned them. We banned investments from China and India, right? Because there's some news which has come out that some investments have been cleared and all that, but that's propaganda. It's not fully right. So we can do more, and in a war, it will happen. You, they, I mean, strictly speaking, it's not one-sided, isn't it? We're prepared for it.
And so, along the same lines, if you look at, say, India starts banning some things, then India needs to produce the same things inside so that it can continue to live life the way we do it. For example, if we ban imports from China, then India needs to re energize its industries. And so
Yeah, I agree
that,
with you.
how do you see that happening? For example, you have been involved in as a director general of artillery. You're looking at making sure that India has its own capacity to build its own weapons and armaments and so on and so forth. And I read in the your viewers, you have to go back to the first episode where I read the detailed bio of Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, so you know what all the things he has accomplished. Perhaps you can share a little bit about the moves that India has done over the last few years to try and be more self-reliant in its defense needs.
Right. I'll split this in two parts.
Sure.
One, we'll talk with China,
Yeah.
right? Because that the normal thing is, well, China will do something where it will adversely affect India economically and
Right.
things like that, or we are over dependent on China. And then we'll talk about the other part of indigenization. As far as China is concerned, we have to realize the whole world is dependent on China. It's not only India. But in the past 1 year, our dependence on China is slowly going down. One. Number two, we are very clear in India that our dependence on China has to go down, especially in strategic sectors, core sectors. For example, in the pharmaceutical structure setup, India is a pharma giant that everyone knows, right? But to sustain the pharma sector, you need APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients. Now, at the turn of the century, we had a very strong setup in India. But with the globalization and WTO and China ingress and all that, the entire structure in India broke down and it shifted to China. So the APIs come from China and then they're converted into drugs and exported out. Today we are rebuilding those APIs. Maybe for the next 5-10 years, we're still dependent on China because what's happened over the past 2 decades will take 2 decades or something equivalent time to de-link from China. So similarly, there will be other issues. I've just given you one example. There are very clear ideas that we should de-link from China and on core issues, including communications, including processes. We are now very, of course, this realization was there earlier itself that anything to do with Chinese software and hardware, we will not put in our core systems. But in peripheral systems where they've been put, or in general public kind of systems where they've been put, we are going to eradicate them slowly. That move is on. Let's not, I mean, we should be realistic to expect that it will not happen in the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years, but it will happen. That I am very confident. It's part of our survival strategy. One. Number two, you spoke of indigenization of weapon systems. Uh, While India remains one of the highest importers of weapon systems, there is a lot of indigenization which has taken place also. Our entire missile program is indigenous. And our entire artillery is indigenous. Our entire naval systems are indigenous. Or we build our own warships. We are building our own aircraft carrier. We are building our own, nuclear subs. So we are building our own aircraft now. I mean, fighter aircraft. So we are moving in the right direction. And these capabilities don't happen overnight, right? And there's a conspicuous thought process that indigenization is a strategic imperative. You see, it's also to do with economics. Uh, if I continue to import whatever I spend on defense at PPP terms, I am spending X times more because technology which is produced or owned is cheap. What is bought is costly. We fully are cognizant of it. Why it has not happened before, I can't explain. I mean, there's no answer to that. That's gone. But what is going to happen ahead? There's a big shift which is happening. Today, you want an example of that shift? It might not be available to you. But tomorrow, it will happen. I mean, look at space. We are monetizing space now. We are launching satellites. There's talk already of building another satellite launching station, right? One we have at Sree, one further down south, because it has to be near 5 degrees above the equator and preferably to the east coast. So we are looking at another base. I mean, I'm just giving you one odd thing. We are trying to convert our firecracker industry into a propellant industry. So there's a lot of movement happening. Yeah, if today you say what is there on ground, nothing is there on ground. But look ahead, it's going to come. I mean, I think India has changed in the past 1 year.
Necessity is the mother of invention, and I think
Yeah.
that's what we are touching upon here. One question I have overall is that India is beginning to understand its own strengths in terms of like, look, I can do these things and I can do these things. But if you look at things like textile industry, for example, what ground it has lost for about 20 years, I think. Coimbatore was one of those places that was badly affected. Yet, Tirupur, which was an upstream market because they were doing mostly knitting and finished product, they have thrived. All that happened was the source changed from Coimbatore to perhaps China or some other lower
Yeah.
cost source, and they've been still able to do. So what I'm trying to say, sir, is that India has industries at different layers. There are companies that will do well, and some bottom foundational technologies need to be re-energized. And in this direction, how do you see, like for example, textiles is one thing that I touched upon, but even agriculture, India's agricultural needs are, in India can produce a lot more than what it is doing. And what are your thoughts overall? I don't want to, pin you down on one
No, no,
particular
I
direction.
understand.
Yeah,
I understand what.
yeah.
Look, India, I feel there are really five focus areas which India has to focus on. First is defense. Second is health and pharmaceuticals. Third is water. Water is very important because India is a water deficient. I wouldn't say water deficient, or management of water is poor,
Yes.
right? Compared to other places, we have enough water. We have to manage it better,
Right.
right? And the third, as you said, is agriculture. We have to invest in agriculture. And fourth is energy. So we invest in these four, in these five. I think they will, and we become strategically independent. It's good. I'll give you a little background. We got our political independence as a nation in 1947. Around the 60s and 70s, with the Green Revolution and Operation Flood and things like that, we got independence from food independence from famine, that independence from famine and hunger. We no more depend on, we're not more dependent on shiploads coming and, going into mouths. Today we are the biggest producer of milk. We export food grains despite everything else. So we've got that kind of independence. In the 90s, we got economic independence by our reforms. Otherwise, we were totally dependent on aid. And in fact, after that, we've started giving aid out after our economic reforms. But we have not been strategically independent. We have not been able to take the decisions we want to do as a nation. And in many opinions today, and I've written an article on this, it's there on my blog, gunnershot.com. These five core sectors, I like to recount: agriculture, water, energy, defense, and health. If we focus on this and get independence on these, India will be a superpower. Look, when I say energy, let me elucidate. I'm not talking of renewable energy and hydro energy, no, or continuing with. I'm talking of space-based energy. After all, India is one of the few countries which has spent a Mangalyaan, a probe into Mars, right? We have tried to go do something in the moon. What is it for? Energy, space-based. It's for fusion energy. You get deuterium from there, and you make liquid hydrogen from there, and you make energy here. And as we go, tomorrow's game, the next century's game will be all about energy. And unless you go to clean energy and become an energy superpower, you are going to combat climate change or feel the effects of climate change. That's one. Now, along with this, climate change is going to affect our agriculture. So, unless we reform our agriculture, we are going nowhere strategically. And to reform our agriculture and energy, you need water. So, you have to manage water better. Unless we get off the importers tag for defense, we cannot be strategically independent. And medicines, where we already have strength, right? And that strength has to be, made whole. So I am very confident. It might not happen in my lifetime. It will happen in my children's lifetime. And there's another issue. This is predicted. This again, you go into any website, you will come to know. Beyond 2050, India is going to be one of the top three economies in the world. So we are going on a path which many people don't understand. And this realization of this word called strategic independence or strategic autonomy, if you ask me in 2019, not many people spoke of it. Today, people speak of it. And this Atmanirbhar Bharat is part of that story. It will happen. I'm, I'm quite confident of it. There's a change which is happening in India, which I've seen last in 90s. And that change is because of the fact that we've been able to kick off this virus without much. We've come out rather unscathed. You might hear of the numbers that we've had a lot of deaths and a lot of people affected. But if you see the case loads, the casualty figures and the percentages, it's very low. The number of deaths are lesser than the number of normal deaths in any case. So, and we are now today surplus of vaccines, right? And we'll come out of it. And our economy will grow. It's already everyone is predicting 10 to 12%. And even if it normalizes over a couple of years, go down to 8-9%, we'll still be the fastest growing economy. So I am very confident that things will go well.
Which brings us to one of the more vexing questions about how does India win the media warfare? I mean, PGurus certainly is trying its little bit to try and bring out a more objective, news-oriented website portal. I'm not beating my own drum here. You have to look, viewers know this because you have to look at the body of work to make that judgment call. So this media warfare, including many within India, seem to want to try and put down India. And this, most of the time, it appears to be misinformation. And people seem to continue to do that. Of course, the government has just come out with some laws that are going to try and put a bit of a guard rails around it. Beyond that, why should or I should say, how do you suggest that India combat this thing? I mean, they need to figure out
Okay.
that these are the good sites, these are the not so good sites. I
No,
mean, I'm just
no,
saying for the guys who's not made up his
look,
mind.
ours is a democracy. There is no way we can control the media. That's the first thing. And I don't think a healthy democracy should control its media. Now, when you talk of media war, there are two sides of the story. You hear one side of the story. Ask the Chinese. They are vexed with our media. If there's one thing they're scared of, it's our media. You'll be surprised. If you think we are losing the media war, you're mistaken. China, with all its media control and their media outlets and their paid news, have not been able to achieve what we've been able to achieve. And I'm not talking to you out of the hat. This is what the Chinese say. They are very, very, very. Our media gets under the Chinese skin. So for me, the media is good, right? Yeah. Now you look at 4 or 5 channels. One is right, one is left, one is right of center, one is left of center, one is centrist. I am not bothered. I get 5 different views, so I make my own opinions, right? And you have different language channels, you have different religion channels. It's such a vibrant system. Why would I be worried about it? I mean, yeah, I agree. There's a Western hypocrisy about how India is portrayed. The Westerners like nothing better than that Indian rope trick to be displayed. A bloody half-naked Indian with a pipe and uh, a rope going up. But that's gone. And when I read, uh, you know, Western opinions on what's happening in India, I say, look, this fellow is they're off. They're looking at a stereotype which doesn't exist. I mean, let me took every headline in India, in USA or in the West would have said India is the second most affected country for COVID. No, India is struggling for COVID. This was the premise by which China undertook its action. They felt that Indian army was affected, India is affected, and they found to their surprise nothing happened in India. When I go out of the streets of Chennai, no one is bothered about COVID. Has not stopped. The economy is back. Yes, we for 4 5 months, but till we came to know how things were, there were lockdowns and everyone was cautious and everything. Then when people realize how to cope with this COVID, everyone is coping with it. We've had a lot of cases, few deaths, very few people. At no point of time did our health services get overwhelmed like it happened in China or in Italy or in other Western societies. We never had it. How do you account for that? That's not reported. It has not affected us. It is like, yeah, economy went down because everything was shut down. Today it's reopened and it is moving back. And I'm very confident we are now going to move to a different place. I'm not too worried about the media. Yeah, at times media will report something which is not good for you. At times it will report something which is good. That's okay. That's part of the game. We have to learn to adjust to this bandwidth as a good democracy. And a lot of people say, look, this government is not democratic and all that. If this government or any government was not democratic, how could so many different views come out of the media? Right? You look back in the times of emergency also, right? Despite emergency and everything, the people's power overthrew emergency. Similarly, the people's power in India will overthrow anyone who goes off grid. If tomorrow this government or a particular party misbehaves, they'll be thrown out. That's our history, right? And look at it another way. I mean, media war and all that. The way India is portrayed in the West. Has there been ever a violent transfer of power in India? We are only a 70-year-old democracy. Look around, all militaries have taken over respective countries in our neighborhood. Has the Indian army ever moved in that direction? Different governments have come and gone, right wing, left wing, center, left of center, right of left, whatever you use. We have, you know, we have communist governments in states even now. We have non-BJP governments in states now. We have different coalitions existing. How can all this exist? If our media has not been free, don't have an open society, we don't have a mature society. So this portrayal of India abroad, I think needs a relook, and it's up to people to believe. I mean, maybe they're catering for a particular audience with a particular mindset. My view, I'm okay with the media.
Well, that was a fascinating discussion we had, sir, and thanks for sharing your thoughts on how you see the economics of India and how it's going to compare vis-a-vis China and Pakistan. And we haven't touched upon Pakistan's economics so far. What are your thoughts about Pakistan's economics? And I know the army runs the entire gamut. In terms of economics, I'm told that it is more of an informal economy, not there's no formal economy as such. What are your thoughts on that? And then we can call this a wrap.
Right. Pakistan has gone into you know, a state where I don't think it can recover. The, why? I mean, you have to understand this fundamentally. Of course, the fact is that their economy was never great. You know, ever since the late 70s, their economy has been going down. That is one part of the story. There are no investments, there are no industry, there are no reforms. I read a Pakistani article, very interesting article, and that was discussing our farm laws and our farm agitation in India. It was written by a lady. She says, look at this, their agitation, and the government has a stand and there's agitation going on. Their end point is the same, reforming of farm sector and improving the farm sector. Their approaches are different. And this was feasible because in the 50s we carried out some reforms. And we are where we are and we are progressing. She says there's no problem with the farm laws or against it or anything. Eventually these people will come to some modicum of understanding and progress. She says in Pakistan we have not done the fundamental change of what India did in 1950. Today what they can do because of their farm laws agitation XYZ is because what they did in 1950 which we have not done. So where are we? So their agriculture is so backwards, right? You have to go back. So they're still living in the age of 1951. Number two, they're going to be affected by climate change. Water. The amount of water, just today I read in Mangla and Tarbela dams is lower than normal. They don't have enough water, right? And the silting is so much that both these dams are almost useless. That's why they're looking at other alternatives. There's no water. And their agriculture is 20% of their economy. That's badly affected because no water, no reforms. And the third thing which has happened is because the Indus doesn't get enough water, the silt has not gone. Indus has silted, and Indus doesn't have enough water to push the silt out. The seawater has come into Indus. So the seawater is ingressed into the land, and it is now affecting the agriculture of Pakistan. Now, if agriculture of Pakistan is affected, which is 20% of their GDP, they are in trouble, big trouble, because their population is going up uncontrolled. No investments. Where will they go? For the first time, this last 1 year, they've been a food importer. So hitherto they were food exporters. They started importing cotton, which they've always exported. So this can't change without investment. All their CPEC investment is in coal-based factories, I mean coal-based power plants and roads. That won't change agriculture. In fact, the power plants will make the place more polluted. Pakistan in one go with CPEC is going to become from the least polluted nations to the most polluted nations. And their power purchase agreements within are so poor that they're going to lose perpetually on electricity. They're going to be a surplus electricity surplus state or nation without offtake. So what they're going to produce can't be consumed, and what they produce they can't be paid. They don't have water. I'm talking of fundamentals. Forget about army, navy, and air, nuclear, and all that nonsense. Basic thing. And their population is exploding, and the governance is poor. So they are in a trap, and they're in a debt trap already. That is well known, documented. So where do you think Pakistan is going? Nowhere. And that is why they are internalizing. They have no choice but to internalize. You see the inflation in Pakistan. On any count you take today, and this is not going to go away. Uh, Notwithstanding IMF restructuring or notwithstanding Chinese loans. In any case, Pakistan doesn't have the capacity to repay even one loan, and neither does it have a history of repaying any loan. So it's going to be in a state of suspended animation. That's the way I foresee things in Pakistan.
And as a contrast, India doesn't have any more IMF loan spending, do they?
No, no, no. Out of question. We are donors.
Yeah, so we've already paid off all those. I
Oh
remember,
no, no. That
70s
time,
and 80s we used to take loans,
the
and those are all
last
done.
no, the last loan we took was in '91, where we had to take gold
Mortgage
from
or gold, yes.
gold,
Yeah.
and incidentally, that gold we never bothered to bring back. Also, I hope you know that it's still in
I didn't
Bank
know
of England.
that. I didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that.
We didn't touch.
Lloyd's was, yeah.
We never bothered about it after that because our economy has moved so much that today it is not profitable to buy that gold back and bring it back.
Yeah,
And
gold has
we've
risen
got
in value, right? Yeah.
we've got phenomenal forex reserves, and our economy is booming. I mean, where is 12% growth in India and -2% growth in or three minus a contraction in Pakistan? I mean, there is no comparison. And this is something which if you read Dawn, you get a sense of it.
Yeah,
They
Don is
know
more truthful. I've seen that. Yeah.
they are very clear. They are also clear about the India-US strategic relationship and the requirement of India-US going in one direction, and Pakistan will never regain that status with USA. I think it's time for India to look beyond Pakistan.
And one last question before we go, sir. Do you see this fundamental crisis that is engulfing slowly Pakistan leading to a situation where they start having exodus into India?
No, I don't think that can happen because at some fundamental level, the Pakistanis are not confident of coming to India. That's a people-to-people level. Right. After all, that radicalism and fundamentalism has, will not permit them to come this side. But social conditions are social conditions. We don't know. But then we have a fence. We don't encourage them to come. There are not many points to go. There's not much exchange. There's no people-to-people exchange. So they won't turn this side, right? And there's no trade. There's hardly any diplomatic equations. So that's how it is. So I don't see that happening. Uh, yeah, what anarchy sitting in Pakistan is fully on the cards, and that's an issue which we have to be cognizant of. What you said might happen. I don't know. We have not war gamed it out, or we've not thought through this problem. If Pakistan goes to that level, what will happen? But I think before Pakistan goes to that level, someone like USA and China will step in because their interests are at stake.
One thing that you mentioned, that the sea is flowing inside back into the river. That's a very major ecological challenge because the groundwater also gets affected when that thing happens,
Yeah, that's why
and
the agriculture is affected. There's
that is some
pollution.
yeah, that is something that they need to act on right away. Oh my God, that's horrible. And
Yeah,
and
there
this
is a
is India is giving a lot of extra excess water to flow. If India starts strictly implementing the river sharing agreements, then think about
yeah.
what will happen.
Then they have a problem. They have a major problem. They have a very major problem then. And in fact, one of India's solutions for water is to enforce that water and take water from the southern rivers. If we take water from the southern rivers as per our share, our problems are by and large resolved. Right? When we resolve that, and it will happen sometime, I don't see it happening immediately, but someone will start doing that. When they do that, Pakistan will go further down the chute. So that's where we are.
Fascinating, sir, and it opens our viewers to a totally new way of looking at the geographic, movements and trends that are happening what are around in and around our neighbors, and India's demographic dividend is going to start paying off soon. And it's a pleasure to have you on this channel, and I'm hoping that we'll have more such stimulating conversations, sir. And thanks once again. It's late in the evening, and you've been very most cooperative in setting aside this time, and we've had this conversation for now a fair amount of time. Thank you once again, General Ravi
Thanks a
Shankar,
lot, sir.
and
Thanks. Thank
and
you.
it's my hope that we will have you again for more such conversations. Namaskar.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Sree Iyer, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
And thanks a lot to all your viewers for patiently watching this show. Thank you.
Thank you.